Kia ora, hello, I'm Philip Duncan. Thank you very much for joining us for our Wednesday weather update for November the 16th. And thunderstorms, that's the main headline, at least for New Zealand, over the coming days. We've got a large area of low pressure out on the Tasman Sea that's about to get even larger. But it's not a storm. It doesn't have a lot of windy weather with it. Instead, it's going to be cut off by high pressure, and that means it's going to decay. And as it does so, as it falls apart, it leaves behind all that moisture. And you add that with the afternoon heating, and it makes for downpours. So this map today shows you not only the wind direction and where the windiest weather is, but it also shows you in the pale blue areas where the highest risk for thunderstorms will be as we go through Wednesday afternoon. So clearly up in the tropics, that's where the highest risk for thunderstorms will be, and also out here in the Tasman Sea. That's where that low pressure zone is forming. But it's actually ahead of the low that we're also going to be seeing this risk around the North Island. Notice that pale shading in the North Island, even to some degree a little bit in the South Island, but mostly around the North Island over the coming days. So let's take a look at where the thunderstorms were when we recorded this on Wednesday morning, around about mid-morning. So as I say, not much over New Zealand, or nothing at this stage. That's because you need that daytime heating. So those downpours will develop as we go through this afternoon, and the afternoons coming up over the next 4 or 5 days. It's going to be a slow-moving, repetitive sort of setup. You can see the thunderstorms out at sea, and the rest of them up in the tropics where they usually are. Here is the thunderstorm risk map. You can see this at weatherwatch.co.nz, as well as the only lightning tracker in the country, thanks to the private sector for putting that together. You can see these downpours over the North Island, so a low to moderate risk on our scale. The green is the highest risk, so inland parts of Northland, Waikato, Central Plateau, and even down towards parts of Hawke's Bay. That's where we see the highest risk for thunderstorms this afternoon, and a low risk in this blue shading over here in the South Island. And what's out at sea, the moderate to high risk, well, that is pretty much trapped there in the center of that low pressure zone. Now with these thunderstorms and downpours developing mostly through the interior of the North Island, that's why you're seeing the heaviest rain around Central Plateau, National Park, places like King Country as well, and to some degree Taranaki and down towards Manawatu. That's where you're in that sort of 45 to 70 millimetre mark. Now there could be some areas that get even more than that. Get a big downpour, a big thunderstorm, and it doesn't move away and it lingers for an hour or two. That can sometimes happen, and that can triple your rainfall totals. So that's sort of like the wild card feature on top of what you're already seeing here in this 3-day rainfall map. So let's get into the forecast. Here we are for Thursday at lunchtime in New Zealand, 10 o'clock in the morning over here in Sydney. So the low is large, but it's not a major storm or anything like that. It's just a large, lazy low. And it parks itself out there and encourages this mild airflow around the North Island in particular, and north to northwesterly. And that makes all these downpours bubble up. So it doesn't mean that everybody in that blue has rain, but it means that the darker that blue is, and where it goes to green, that's where the highest risk for downpours will be. So it's very clear that it's inland areas. Now there could be some coastal areas around Northland and Auckland and Waikato, because at some point the breeze will push those downpours to the coastlines, or will move them around from one region to the next. The South Island's also got a few risks there for downpours and maybe a thunderstorm. And over on the other side, drier and cooler with southerly winds. As we move through the week and we get to Friday, the low itself hasn't changed. It's still parked in the same spot, barely moving, and it's still bringing in that mild, muggy airflow. So downpours and thunderstorms on Friday across both main islands, but mainly inland and mostly around the North Island. Over in Australia, windy northerlies with some rain or showers coming in around Adelaide, and for Perth, windy and colder, the next southerly change on its way through. So let's take a look at the weekend, and we'll kick off with that southerly change here on Saturday. Look at this. Someone on YouTube told me off the other day for saying that Melbourne was just down the road from Adelaide. Look, I'm well aware of the distance in size. I mean, I can see that it's a long distance, but sometimes these big changes come through and they cover a huge distance all at once. For example, this one. So from Western Australia all the way over to about Adelaide, that entire area gets this cold change at around about the same time. And it will move through and across to the southeastern corner at roughly the same time too. And we get this in New Zealand quite often with a cold front. It will come in at one go, and the whole South Island kind of gets it at the same time. So we're seeing that cold change sweeping in to South Australia. Probably won't be until the end of the day for Adelaide, and warmer, windier northerlies for that southeastern corner, and yes, a little bit more rain on the way as well. And in New Zealand, it's still the same setup. We've still got that low, dry areas in the mix as well. The airflows are shifting around a little bit on Saturday, perhaps tilting a bit more northwest for the North Island and northeast for the South Island. And I can already hear the complaints because the nor'easter is not a popular direction for those in Dunedin and Christchurch. Now on Sunday, there is a bit of a change coming through here. That wintry change moves in to parts of Australia, basically from Adelaide and just down the road to Melbourne, just down the flight path to Melbourne. That might be a better way of saying it. Windy weather though, westerlies coming through Bass Strait. Behind it, there's that cold southerly coming on in. So spring-like weather on Sunday over there, but also here in New Zealand too. We've got a nor'wester, the low falls apart, and the whole thing turns quite messy, as you can see on this map right here. So next week, Monday, kicks off with windy nor'westers or westerlies across New Zealand. Typical spring-like weather blowing through. And in Australia, look at this cold change blasting through the southeastern corner. Really is mostly Victoria and Tasmania caught up in it, but so will Canberra, ACT. You'll get touched by it a little bit as that change comes through, and a little bit of southern parts of New South Wales. Otherwise, it's really just a dry, cooler temperature drop once again coming in for you. And there could even be a dusting of snow once again over there in Tasmania. That is all from me. We've got all the latest news for New Zealand and the thunderstorm maps, Met Service warnings, and of course the live rain radar, which is the main feature when you're tracking these thunderstorms, as well as obviously the lightning tracker. But the lightning tracker, being privately run, doesn't have networks everywhere. We are working on an improvement for that, and we're also working positively with Met Service, hoping that we can share some of their lightning data as well in 2023. That's all from me. We'll see you tomorrow with our next update.